shoeless carpenters really needed was something smaller than tenths. So let's sort it out for them. Suppose we start with an ordinary whole number like this one, 243. Do you remember what happens when you divide a number by 10? Each 100 becomes a 10. Each 10 becomes a unit, and each unit becomes a tenth. So the 243 becomes 24.3. 2 tens, 4 units, and 3 tenths. Dividing by 10, the number moves one place to the right. Suppose I divide this number by 10. What do you expect the result will be? 2.43. What does that mean? Let's see. Each 10 becomes a unit. Each unit becomes a tenth. Each tenth becomes 1/10 of 1/10. And here's one of them. 10 of these make one of these, and 10 of these make 1 unit. So 1 of these is 1/100th of a unit. So when we're dividing by 10, each tenth becomes 100th. 2.43. 2 units, 4 tenths, and 3 hundredths.
For measuring length, the unit that I'm using is 1 metre. For more accuracy, divide it into tenths. For more accuracy still, divide it into hundredths. Here's a tape measure with hundredths of a metre. The tenths are printed on the tape, but you have to count the hundredths.
By the way, the 0 is at the very end of the loop. So if you're measuring this table, you have to hold the 0 end like this.
2 metres, 2.9 metres, that's 2 metres and 9 tenths, and 2 hundredths. This table is 2.92 metres long.
And I am
1.6 metres, 1.61 metres. So, you can use hundredths for measuring your height in metres, and you can also use them for measuring longer distances as well.
Here's Martin Girvan, the champion hammer thrower. It looks like a good throw, and they're measuring the distance now. Here's the result, a throw of 68.22 metres. 68 metres, 2 tenths and 2 hundredths.
Here's a trick you can play on your friends. After the green light comes on, I'm going to show you 2 numbers for less than a second, and you have to call out which is the bigger number. Now don't wait for me to say go this time. Just call out as soon as you know which it is. Ready?
This card says 2.79. That's 2 units, 7 tenths and 9 hundredths. But this card says 5. That's 5 units. If you wanted to, you could say 5 units, no tenths, and no hundredths. 5.00. Writing it like this, it's easier to see which is the bigger number.
How about these two numbers? Here's the decimal point, so the 2 is 2 units and the 3 is 3 tenths. 32, 32.0, or 32 and no tenths, if you like. How about the other one? Whoops, that's not right. Line up the decimal point. 6 units, 1 tenth, and 4 hundredths. 6.14.
This is a bathroom cabinet. And it needs a shelf. And the length of the shelf needs to be, well, I'd estimate it's less than a metre, so it'll be 0 point something. .36. That's 0.36 of a metre. One of these should do. .38, so that's too big. 0.36. This should do it. Do you know exactly what went wrong?
This is the correct piece.
And this is the piece that fell through.
Now in each case, this is the nearest mark on the tape, 0.36 metres. Obviously we need even smaller fractions of a metre.
And here they are. Thousandths of a metre. 10 times this distance is this distance. There are 100 of these in a metre, so there are 1,000 of these in a metre. This is 1,000th of a metre.
1 unit, 1 tenth, 1 hundredth, 1,000th. By itself, naught point naught naught 1.
Let's measure that shelf space again. That's 0.369. So the shelf mustn't be more than 0.369. And it mustn't be less than the distance from the side of the cabinet to the edge of the bearing. And that is 0.361. How long was the shelf? .363. So the difference between the length of the shelf and the space it has to fit into is the difference between 0.369 and 0.363.
0.369, that's the shelf space. Take away 0.363. 3. That's the length of the shelf. 9 thousandths take away 3 thousandths, that's 6 thousandths. 6 hundredths take away 6 hundredths, no hundredths. 3 tenths take away 3 tenths, that's no tenths. Can you see what's wrong? By itself, it just says 6. We need a decimal point. This is the units column. No units take away no units. That's easy. 0.006
Of a metre. From here to here.
1 potato.
1,000th of a potato. 1 litre of orange juice.
1,000th of a litre of orange juice. 1 long piece of string.
1,000th of it. You know what a MATHSCORE programme looks like? Well, here's just 1,000th of a programme, all on its own. Ready, go.
Now here's something that needs some very careful thinking. So I'll start with something quite simple. Here are 3 sandwiches. If I share them out equally between 2 people, what will each get? How many sandwiches? 1.5. Suppose I check that on my calculator. 3. Now I need to divide that by 2, and it equals 1.5. Half of 3 is 1.5, 1 5/10. No problem so far. Half of 3 is 1.5. The calculator says so, and the sandwiches say so.
1.5!
Half of 3 is 1.5. Are you sure? Let's see. 3 pounds. That's 1 for Elaine and 1 for me. What about this one?
You need some change. Then each person gets 1.5 pounds. The trouble is, we don't usually call this 1.5 pounds. Of course, this is worth £0.5. It's worth 0.5 of a pound. But it doesn't say pounds. It says 50 pence. If anyone asked me how much money this was, I'd almost certainly say £1.50. And I'd write it like this. 1.50 pounds. 1 whole pound, 5/10 of a pound, and no hundredths of a pound.
Here's another pile of money. 2 tens, 1 unit, that's 21 pounds, 6 tenths of a pound, and 3 hundredths of a pound. The decimal point separates the whole numbers of pounds from the fractions of a pound. 21.63 pounds. Suppose I just had the coins. 0.63 pounds. Nothing wrong with that.
But we usually call this 63 pence, or 63p. And if you say 63, what you mean is 6 tens and 3 units. So either you'd be wrong, or these headings are wrong. It's no good putting this in the tens column, because this is for tens of pounds. What's really happening is that we're thinking of the pennies on their own. It's as if there were 2 separate headings. So this has got 2 names. It's either 10 pence or 1/10 of a pound. And this is either 1 penny or 1/100th of a pound. But if you've got an amount of money that's less than £1, like this, then of course you think of it as just pence, 35 pence. You don't need the decimal point because you're thinking in pennies. Your unit is 1 penny. 3 tens and 5 units, 35 pence. But if you've got pounds as well, then this is your unit. We've got 2 tens, 1 unit, 3 tenths and 5 hundredths. 21.35 pounds.
And talking of hundredths, let's see how those carpenters are getting along.